Hey, kia ora koutou te whānau. Welcome back to another edition of A Big Hairy News. Kia ora, Chewie.
Kia ora, Pat.
Hey, man. Rick, what's crack-a-lackin'?
Good. I'm hoping my internet is good this week because
What happened?
Internet was terrible. I don't know, but it seemed pretty consistent over a range of people in Dunedin that I asked. So yeah, I forwarded it on, and I'm not getting the little unstable connection thing. So hopefully today is good, and I'm not dial-up, Chewie.
Chewie is whole again, whānau. Chewie is
maybe
whole.
I should change the name because that's not fair.
Oh, yeah, and you haven't put a racially motivated one next to me today, so that's good. I'm happy that we're not going to get a complaint from the Human Rights Commission or something. Nice.
Black
I
hat,
jest.
hat.
Before we get going, let me just do this straight away because so thankful to so many people who have got behind us and supported us in all sorts of ways, including that one, this way, top left-hand corner.
Do the QR code. Do it.
Do it. Are you telling them to do it?
Do it.
Okay.
I'm telling everyone to do the QR code.
And we've been really lucky that lots of people have been supporting us and passing the word around. And like we went into a couple of big Facebook groups today, He Tangata and a couple of Palestinian ones as well. So if you want to support what we're doing and you want to vote for us for the New Zealand Podcast Awards, the QR code is in the top right left-hand corner. Sorry. And yeah, no one noticed. I can't do left and right. It's still my brain just goes boom, boom, and I do often have to do that. The worst one is when you're at the oven, and it says like left, back, right, front, for the elements, and I always have to go shit. Okay, back, got it. I can't. It just doesn't stick in my little dyslexic brain. Anyway, then you can click on the QR code and nominate for a podcast award. The other thing, though, as well, is I noticed as I put us into a few groups today to say, hey, come help us out. If you're part of a big group that, you want to ask the mods if you want to put us in to get nominated as well. Super simple. Just follow the link, nominate the podcast, tell us where you listen or view. Obviously, it's the Apple podcast link or the Spotify podcast link, or I think the YouTube link's fine for it as well. And you might help us secure a little award. 20th of November they get announced, and I think they get cut off around the 15th of November. So we've got a couple of weeks. Anyway, let's not.
What do they call it? Back to back to back, or a three-peat? Is that a sporting reference? Am I doing it correctly?
I think this could be the fifth one, and we went into the first one, and then in the first one all the radio stations won, and I was a bit like, this is. Yeah, maybe we won't bother. And so we didn't go in at all. We didn't enter into the second one. And then in the third one, we went, hey, let's see if we can jerry-rig the system to get ourselves a listener's choice. And it sort of works. So yeah, the last three, we've got something in there. Doesn't mean we will this time. They are getting bigger, but we'll see. That we'll see. Okay, lots of things going on tonight, whānau. 4 stories. Hipkins on Q&A talking capital gains tax. Average. It's, you know what, if you ever believed, or if you ever didn't believe that old mate Jack Tame wasn't partisan, all you needed to do was watch this weekend's Q&A, because he had both Karen Chhour and Chris Hipkins on and treated them basically both exactly the same. Like, both of them got hard questions, got their feet held to the fire, got things pointed out. So it was really interesting. It was a good broadcasting show this weekend, so we had a check of that. John Tamihere, resignation called for. I've got a bit of behind the scenes gossip that I've heard from 2 or 3 contacts, not within Te Pāti Māori, but who are around Te Pāti Māori as to what the possibilities are. I'll share that kind of gossip with you, all unofficial stuff, but 2 or 3 groups of people saying the same thing makes you kind of go, oh, okay, that's interesting. And what else are we doing? Luxon on ZB talking 3Waters. It's a really quick one actually because, not to bury the lead. They basically say, hey, this group says that 3Waters would have been cheaper. What do you think of that? And then there's 90 seconds of obfuscation. And no answer, but we'll have a bit of a squiz at that as well. Lots of other bits and bobs going on as well. As you can see, if you were ever wondering, I now live in Dunedin. You can tell it's official, Chewie. I thought we might get one of these that says Otipoti and we could put it in the back of yours. And then I could be in Dunedin and you can be in Otipoti. Just a thought,
so
maybe.
I love that marketing, that gothic script for Dunedin. And I had seen somebody had done an Otipoti one.
Yeah.
And so I went into the little council information gift shop sort of thing, and I found out 2 things. A, they give out the Dunedin, the stickers, like the sign in the background there, for free.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. But what surprised me is that the Otipoti one, they don't do. They were aware of it, but it was somebody else's project that they've done. And I was like, you guys should really do this. And they're like, oh, we keep on thinking about it. I'm like, someone should do it because it's cool.
Little bird told me that you might be doing something with your background across summer break. We should get you an Otipoti one and we can be Dunedin and Otipoti. I think that'd be a good idea. We should do that. Cool. So lots going on tonight. Some things to share as well. In fact, I'll share this because I've already talked about stuff tonight. I don't know. I want to show you, it gets towards the end of the year, I start working on things like numbers and how we've gone and where we are in the podcast. And if you guys follow me on Blue Sky or not YouTube, what is the other one? Twitter. Or if you're on Facebook, you probably would have already seen this, but I want to expand on it to let you know what's going on. Oh, I haven't shared my screen yet, Chewie. That's what I forgot to do, share my screen. I just pushed the button expecting the screen to be there, but I haven't yet shared my screen. But no one saw that. That was just you and me, eh? No one's seeing what's going on right now. So smooth. So smooth. So I had a look at the last 3 months of the podcast. Last 3 months combined, our little podcast that could. You know that, I think it's a kid's storybook about the little engine that could. I think I can. Has gotten 4,345,042 views and or listens over all platforms. Bring on 2026, baby. So I wanted to show you that. I'm going to tell you some other numbers shortly as well, but also show you something kind of hilarious. If you ever wanted to know the difference between Blue Sky and Twitter, here it is. So this is Blue Sky. This is Blue Sky. You're doing the work of the good, standing up to the bullies, with you all the way. And then that was from Howie. And then Sarah said, so flippin' good. And you can see we've had, there's 48 likes and stuff there. Exactly the same message word for word on Twitter. And again, about 40 likes. So similar in sort of size and response. Those are the responses on Twitter. They're not good views though. You can't hear the names you're being called. Have me on. Don't know who that is. That's a piss in the bucket, not bad for 2 fat losers. And most of them laughing at you. I guess it turns out rage bait and misinformation is good for clicks. When you were centrist and quite sensible, your numbers were dire. You embrace extremism and they shoot up. A sad indictment of our times. Pat distracts himself on quantity over quality. What's the number of spooge wipes? Mostly comedy shows get many more votes and the great unwashed. And you're definitely playing your part. This is all of the, there's nothing else. Like this is all of the comments on Twitter. Basically playing your part and watching your Labour guys lose. Not necessarily a Labour guy, but. So if you want a little, if you just want to have a little approximation or understanding of the difference between Blue Sky and Twitter, I thought that was quite a good one. But here's something else for you, Chewie. Now, obviously, if you've been watching us for a while, you'll know that we've brought on different platforms as we've grown. So we didn't start with we didn't have Twitter broadcasting at the start. We didn't have Facebook broadcasting. So the only thing that's been consistent since day one is YouTube. So the YouTube views are really the thing that show us where we've done. You'll get ready for this, Chewie. 2021. Now, I know you weren't kind of full on with me in 2021, but you were part of the team. We started in February. In 2021, the whole of 2021, 78,393 views. That's YouTube, the whole of 2021. Whole of 2022, 167,000 and some change views. The whole of 2023, 454,000.
Bigger number. The numbers are getting bigger.
They are, but it's still 2023 454,000. 2024 2.931 million, and so far this is YouTube only. And so far in 2025 we're already crossed 3 million. So heading towards maybe 3.3, 3.4, 3.5 million, and that's YouTube only views in 2025. But it is interesting to see the growth and to look back to 2021 and go 78,000 views in the whole year. How the hell did we keep going? Like, honestly, how the hell? And that's the other thing, whānau, which I'm really grateful of. Those of you who are supporting us in whatever way, whether you're watching or sharing or purchasing merch or Patreon or whatever you're doing, the thing that I realized when looking at this, if there is another fantastic group of people who want to do something like this and get it up and off the ground on the left, then they're probably going to do under 100,000 views in their first year. And it's really hard to keep going with that. So I'm so thankful for people who have been on board to be involved with us, whether you just watch all the way up until, you contribute financially, because I look back at 78,000 views over the whole of 2021 and go, how the heck did we do that? But we did, and here we are. So it's kind of cool. Anyway, Chewie, it's just a little bit, because I'm doing numbers at the end of the year and got some ideas for maybe some sponsorship type stuff, and that's where we're at. And it just made me laugh. Something else I saw on the weekend. There's this guy in politics called Donald Trump. You know of him?
Oh, God. It hasn't happened, though, has it?
No, the happening hasn't happened.
No, the event hasn't happened. Okay. Well, what's he done now? Did he knock down the rest of the White House?
There's this, did you see South Park last week? Oh my God, it was so funny. Did you see it? Talking about the woman in the hat, and the woman in the hat is like a ghostly apparition that lives in the White House, and it's Melania. And Donald Trump's character keeps coming and calling an exorcist to try and exorcise the woman in the hat who's living in the White House. It's very, very funny. Marie Antoinette is this kind of example we use of over-the-top opulence, that she will eat cake and she will continue to live that lifestyle when the peasants outside are starving. In America at the moment, in many places, the quote-unquote peasants are starving. Now, when you think Marie Antoinette, you think a certain level of luxury. So think about this. The American peasants are starving, right? And this is Donald Trump's Halloween party. I might just turn the music down in case it's copyright. But it's actually like 1930s. It actually looks like it could be in a castle. It could be Marie Antoinette doing it. It could actually be royalty.
This was at Mar-a-Lago, and it was a Great Gatsby themed event. And a couple of thoughts came across my head. It's like, oh shit, they're still able to attract young women to this den of vipers. That's interesting. I hope the paycheck's good enough. And then the other part of it was, none of these people read. If anybody there had read The Great Gatsby, they would know it's a critique rather than a celebration. But yeah, super gross. This is the same day, or at least the same week, that they are cutting off what they call their SNAP benefits, food stamps, food program for poor people, mainly black poor people. But
I think the number is 60% are either children or the elderly. So 60% of these people are either underage, like not of adult age, or are retirees. And so when you see all these Fox News hosts talking about these people need to get up and get out and get a job, like 60% of the people on SNAP are too young or too old to go out and get a job, so to speak.
And certainly the MAGA crowd, as you would expect on social media, have been measured, have been really just talking about just that. No, they've been fucking racist from wall to wall. They are loving the fact that poor people that they will never meet are not going to have food. And that is funny to them, and they're enjoying it. It is a sick society over there, and I just don't know how they're going to fix it.
Yeah. Last thing, not necessarily as a push, but just to let you guys know, that we've got an update on the website. And I'm sure Chewie and his lovely Mrs. Chewie will be interested. We have a series of teas up at the moment. There would be a Nala tea, and there's Rust and Black Marl and that grey. There would be an Ilva tea. That's the Black Marl. That's the grey. That's the Rust. And of course, there is it's basically a mimic on the Pattern Chewie t-shirt, and it's Nala and Ilva. They're up on the store. As I said, I'm aware that people are going to be thinking about Christmas and that kind of stuff. So we won't. Oh, there's Ilva. My one's not here. She's upstairs. But just letting you know
You're on
that
a t-shirt.
they're there. He's on 2 t-shirts. He's on that one as well. With no.
Did you know you're on a t-shirt? You're not very happy about this, are you?
No. She's getting her 5% though. Is that right? Is that what we agreed to with her lawyer?
Yeah. And snacks.
Yeah. So there you go. We're rocking and rolling. And the next couple of weeks. Oh, let me see the dog a bit closer. Hang on. I want to see the dog. There we go. Let's see Doggo. Hello, Doggo. Hey, Ilva. the shortest leg to body ratio dog in the world.
Let's do this. Oh, it's a chunky dog. See, look, the legs just run out. They just stop.
It's supposed to be knees where those feet are. It looks like,
On your cheek.
There you go. And I would show you mine, but she's upstairs socialising. All right, team. Big old few weeks coming up. We also have pretty much organised the Christmas party, 6th of December. There is word of a meetup happening in Dunedin. We'll give you more details on that maybe this week, maybe next week. So if you're in or around Dunedin and you're interested in doing a bit of a meetup, it'll be an evening meetup with maybe some other bits and bobs happening as well, but we'll keep that powder a little bit dry. Okay. I don't know if anyone screamed banner in the chat. For some reason they screamed banner when I put the banner on. I still don't really understand that. There's the banner that's just changed now. Let's have a look at a few chats that have come in already just to kickstart the show off, and then we will get into a conversation with someone. Citizen Gold says 411 days at most. Kia ora all. For Tizzle and Art, I love. Is it TZIE? For Tizzy and Art, I love. Not the Great Gatsby Orange Turds Party. Peter says Trump and the Great Pumpkin have never been seen in the same room at the same time. And Howie says, how alarmed should we be with the US regressive narrative being pumped into New Zealand? I genuinely worry that we'll be stolen just the same. Yeah, one of the big things I've been thinking about this, we talked about this a bit last week, Chewie. Maybe you've got some thoughts on it as I line up our first story. But one of the interesting things is the government, and Luxon in particular, lying a lot. Like, for example, around the capital gains tax. But the thing that makes me think of America is, Trump convinced a low IQ population, unengaged population, that China will be paying the tariffs, lied enough that, and for long enough and confidently enough, that people went to voting, thinking that he was doing a good thing with tariffs. So I have quite a large concern that we're seeing something similar. I mean, I almost don't want to give them credit for actively trying to do it, but the big thing about the US politics, which I'm seeing in New Zealand at the moment, which is concerning me, is that whole thing about just bullshitting and having the population believe it, and then be like, oh, and then they go to vote thinking, for example, that they're one of the people that are about to be hit with the capital gains tax, when really only 10% of the country is going to be paying anything. Yeah, so that's my concern around it.
I've been paying closer attention than I usually do to nationals, especially their Facebook and Instagram presence. since the mega strike. And it has shocked me a little bit, and especially with the capital gains thing. Like, national social media team have been banging the drum about, hey, look, Labor haven't announced the capital gains tax, but we all know that they're going to. They're going to. They've never mentioned anything about it, but they're definitely going to do it. And then it came out, and they're like, see, and then it's just been a spiral. They have been waiting for it. And I think you're right. In the past, you could maybe go, oh, okay, well, this is a creative view of the numbers, but I can kind of see how they get there. This is just outright lies. It is outright lies and fear-mongering. And it's like they've taken the handbrake off. When Luxon was in Malaysia, he just went with a statement that was just 100% false. Nicola Willis, not much better. Seymour, straight onto Twitter and Facebook, and a similar sort of thing. They all went off. They set off the bomb straight away, and it was just not true. And whenever Labor are trying to go, no, look, we've been really, really open about this. It's only this, and it's only this, and like all of the scaremongering is not true. Then they've pivoted to, but can you trust them? They're saying the things, but are they going to do the things? Are they going to stick to it? Or is it the Māori party? Is it the minor parties that are pulling their strings? With a complete lack of irony, they've been running this sort of stuff. And it is protection. It's like, well, we're doing it, so they're definitely going to do it. And I think, if you go into the comments and you discount all of their really weird rah-rah bots or inauthentic engagement, I think people have seen through it. But it's real hard to tell. I wouldn't want to bet the farm on it. I still think there's a lot of work to do. And Labor have to be really on the ball to fight this.
Yeah, I think
do worry that this could be like a second go at 3Waters, where they just did not do a good job combating the misinformation out there.
I feel today, in the past I've said, statistically speaking, National should win the next election because we don't have one-term governments. But in saying that as well, these guys are acting and seem to be being received by the government as a third-term government. Like the way that the public are responding to them is like you would see a third-term government getting a bit sick of you doing it. So perhaps it is possible, but I don't know. I just kind of feel at the moment that if we use the last election as evidence, the social media narrative was won by National. There's no question they won the social media narrative. And they're getting people on board, whether it's officially or unofficially. And we highlighted like Duncan Garner last week and the bullshit being said within then the media circles. I'll tell you something about that in a second, ironically. And so then they're getting it from the podium and they're getting it from their favorite, quote unquote, air quotes, favorite media person. And then they're spreading it in their Facebook groups. I have a lot of concerns. And I've already pledged, and I will continue to pledge, I will not be picking who's going to win the next election because I'm normally wrong. So it's a concern. I was going to say about the Duncan Garner thing. It's quite funny. Do you remember Chewie in our little conversation? And then he played one of our clips, and he was like, "Oh, 20,000 subscribers. You're halfway there, boys." And I said, you don't ever brag about your numbers. As in, I'm more, because what he's saying is he's more important than us, because he's got more followers. Celebrate your numbers like we did before with our overall, but you never use them. Like I would never say to someone on Twitter, why would I respond to you? You've only got 5 followers. It's a bad plan, because what happens is then at some stage that person or that group can show you up by either being bigger than you or by getting more reach. And if that person who you've basically said are not important because they're smaller, what do you say to them when they become bigger? Well, funny story, Chewie. The response that Duncan Garner did to us last week has about 11,000 views. our response to his response across all of those clips, it's up over 100,000 views. So he might have twice the number of subscribers on YouTube. I know I didn't know this was going to happen, so I didn't say it with knowledge, but that's exactly why. So he's been ratioed 10 to 1, tenfold, by people picking up on the clips we made about his clips. And so you just don't do that. You just don't do that.
Because it's not authentic.
Yeah.
Like, he's not authentic, his show's not authentic, and his subscriber base is not authentic.
Yeah. People are saying in the chat, bought subs. Maybe not. Yep. Doesn't really matter. Anyway. Okay, hey, let's get into the night, shall we? Because we do have 4 stories to check off, and 2 of them are Q&A interviews and could be a bit long. Now, just so you know, we've got both Karen Chhour and Chippy from Q&A, and as is always the case, we could probably do an hour on each of the conversations, but because of time, I'm going to do 3 clips of each, and that's it. Because we can't do everything, or else we will be here until 1 a.m. So let's start with Karen Chhour, and let's have a look at the beginning of the conversation she's having with Jack Tame, and they're talking about the stats for reoffending, how the boot camp kids who went in, what their reoffending was when they came out. Because remember, boot camp is a solution to youth crime.
You've seen the published version of the independent report into the military-style academies. But the pilot program experienced runaways. 1 participant was booted off. Another, of course, was tragically killed in a car accident. Of the 8 people who completed the pilot course, how many have reoffended?
So I won't go into any details yet. That report, that independent review into the military-style academies is due to be released soon.
Well, we know how many have reoffended, though, right?
I don't really want to go into the details until I can speak to those details, if that makes sense. So we'll
Jack does well, though, because she's saying she's using that as an excuse not to talk about it, but Jack's just saying, I want a number. I don't want to know their address or what they did. I just want a number, which is fair.
For the review to come out, and then I'll be happy to have
I'm not going to ask about the individual cases.
What we analysed
am I right in thinking at least 7 have reoffended?
Yes, but what we need to look at, and what we haven't looked
out of 8.
Sweet.
Out of 8. So this is the solution to youth crime, remember, that every expert in the world, and even some idiot rodeo clown from Dunedin told you, is not going to work. That's what the research says everywhere. So your pilot plan, and I'm going to burn a bit of powder here, has already had 7 out of 8 reoffending, and the 8th one has allegations of reoffending. I believe the charges are still pending. But this is the solution to youth crime, Chewie.
And a death.
Yeah. But this is the solution to youth crime.
In the past with previous programs is, what does that offending look like? Have we reduced harm in our communities, and have we reduced the level of the crime? So her spin is but they're committing nicer crimes. The crimes they're committing aren't as bad as they were. So, it's kind of a win. That's the literal spin that you're about to hear.
That is such a pivot.
Yeah, you have a listen.
Wow.
In our communities, and have we reduced the level of the crime? An example would be if a young person was going out and they were committing, serious armed burglary, but now that they've gone out and they might have shoplifted. That reduction in the level of harm in our community is something that we're really looking at. We never did that in the past with previous programs to allow us to see.
I wonder why. I wonder why we never went, well, they were killing people and now they're stealing lollipops, so that's a win. I wonder why we never did that in the past. I wonder. So what they're now saying, what National's now saying is, well, this is ACT, I guess, but what this National-led government is now saying is little crimes, okay. Big crimes, not okay. Which is definitely not the message that we got all the way through the election and the last 2 years.
Length of time between offending, what differences have changed with those young people. But what I would say, Jack, is every single one of those young people really showed that they wanted to change, really showed that they wanted to make their families proud. And I'm proud of giving them the opportunity to do that. What they did with it...
Stats might say other words that we've just actually heard about.
It was up to them, but I've given them that opportunity.
So to be clear, to the best of your knowledge, has anyone not reoffended?
really just don't want to go into the review.
You don't have to go into.
Week.
You don't have to give us the details about the reoffending. I appreciate that you're comparing different levels of harm that has come from reoffending.
I just have to be really careful, because just because somebody's been accused of offending might not necessarily mean that they have offended.
So that would mean, though, that the 8th person there has been accused of reoffending. They might not have been convicted.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
I just don't want to go into too much detail until I can speak to the facts behind the detail.
Okay.
So in other words, Jack is calling her out, saying that there's someone with pending charges. Now, I'm not laughing at youth crime. I mean, I think the wraparound system, that the words they speak sometimes, like about wraparound system and support, they're good words, but coming from a place that the systems that they're putting in place don't do that and don't work. So the reason I think me and Chewie are chuckling and stuff, it's at the failure of the policy that everyone knew would fail, as opposed to these young people who actually need help and a system set up around them to help them get in the right direction. The world told this government this is not going to do that, and guess what? This is not doing that. So they have a 7 out of 8 confirmed reoffending and a 1 out of 8 charges pending reoffending. And what are they going to do? They're going to push this through, and it's going to become what they do with youth offenders, Chewie. And that's their pilot program. That now, I understood reoffending is normally about 50, 60%, like out of a prison. This is worse than your average reoffending out of a prison. So what do we say then?
Yeah, so my laughing at this is not over the situation. It's because of two things. Karen Chhour is very uncomfortable, and that makes me laugh, because she has wandered into Jack Tame's show and thought that argument would fly, and it's not. The second part of this is the absolute inevitability of this, because when they brought out this boot camp program again, they dusted it off from the bad ideas cupboard that National keep on going back to and go, it'll be fucking different this time. And we all went, it hasn't worked here before. The last 2 times you've tried it.
Here's the research.
It doesn't work overseas.
Yeah.
Here's all the research, all the stats and figures. We're not just saying this because we don't like the blue team. We're saying it because it's ineffective. It's never been ineffective. And your only answer to that is, this time it'll be different. And it hasn't been. If anything, it's been worse.
Well,
they've spent more money for a worse outcome.
And just to go back to that point that I kind of pulled a number out of the air, approximately 60% of people leaving prison in New Zealand are re-sentenced within 2 years, and about 42% are re-imprisoned. So they're going from a 60% general population prison reoffending to 100%, or at least 90%, well, probably technically, 7 out of 8? 7, it's 5, 85%, with 15% still pending. So they are at least double what the general population prison rates is for reoffending. But hard on crime, youth crime goes away, ram raids down, and they'll push it through.
Especially with the election coming up, remember that National is tough on crime. They need to spin this, or they need to sort of go, oh, well, we've tweaked this program, and they're not going to get rid of it. They're going to try again. Yeah. Because, again, this isn't the problem that they're solving, is not youth crime. It is the appearance of being tough on crime. Whether it's effective or not, they're going to turn public money into a program that does not work, and they are going to generate negative outcomes. It is just what National does. It turns public money into diarrhea.
The other thing that they went on to talk about was Oranga Tamariki, and actually it was quite a long conversation. It was nearly 8 minutes altogether. So I've cut off the first 3 minutes. The first 3 minutes of the conversation was Jack basically trying to get Karen Chhour to answer a question around reduction in abuse or harm at state care, because the government in the last couple of weeks have put out a document that says, we were trying to get a 15% reduction by the end of 2029 or whatever it was, and we've already done it. And when the minister was pressed on that by Jack Tame, it ended up being that 3 people in state care, 3 teens in state care, were better off. Like there was 3 fewer people who hadn't been offended against. No, I mean it's a reduction, but it's 3 people. And then what they didn't do is go on to talk about the abuse, not just in state care, i.e. people taken off their parents or who are in a situation where they have to, but also the wider sort of group of state care, which can be still with families and that. And because abuse in those areas has gone up to record levels, and the government hasn't talked about that at all. I apologise, it's probably not the best summary of what's been done, but because we can't play everything, I wanted to kind of pick it up from the point where Jack comes in saying there's been a 14% reduction in abuse or harm at state care residences, but overall there's been a significant increase. If you go outside the actual residences to the state care system, it's a massive increase. And the question he's asking her is, why wasn't that in your press release? Which I think is fair.
The number of children in state care who are being harmed, that has increased as well. So we've now got, if we look at the overall stats for the last year, the 14% reduction in abuse or harm in state care residences, and you've put out a press release celebrating that achievement.
So residences, so that's in home, in a residence, in a state residence looking after. It's probably, Chewie, what in the olden days they almost called borstal. I don't know if it's quite as black and white as that, but it's
It is.
Yeah, okay. So it's almost like it's like a detention rather than we're helping you for your mental health. So they're down by 3 individuals. Numbers are down. But overall, as Jack goes on to say,
the 14% reduction in abuse or harm in state care residences, and you've put out a press release celebrating that achievement. But at the same time, for kids in the wider state care system, reports of abuse have increased to record levels. The number of children reported as being abused has also increased to record levels.
Are you speaking to reports of concern?
No, I'm talking to the reports of abuse.
Yeah.
So on your watch, a 14% reduction in abuse or harm in state care residences, but at the same time, abuse in the overall system has increased to record levels, and the number of children being abused has increased to record levels. So where would I find that in your press release?
I've spoken to what being in care means, but now we need to speak to what that harm means and break down what that harm is. So return to home is the most dangerous time for a young person to go home. So Oranga Tamariki keeps that custody, if that makes sense.
So, sorry, just for a minute, can you answer my question?
I'm getting there.
No, my question was, why didn't you mention that in the press release?
Because
the overall abuse had reached record levels.
Because I think it's actually important to acknowledge when things are going well, whilst also things may not necessarily be going well across the whole.
But they're not going well. I think that's the point Jack's making, but they're not going well. Because the 14%, this is why it's percentiles can always put things out. 3 people. Go back and watch the interview yourself, Whānau, and you'll see what I'm talking about with the 3 people. So the number of people who were not offended against to get that 14% was 3 individual people. But everywhere else, like outside of those borstals, outside of those residences, it's record levels, which means it's not going well. So when the minister says we have to celebrate things going well, this is not it. We're not looking at that right now.
When things are going well, whilst also things may not necessarily be going well across the whole board.
Right. But you didn't acknowledge that, though, did you?
I did in the House, in Parliament.
But you didn't in your press release.
No, because my press release was specifically about residents.
About the good stats, yeah.
About residents.
But not about the overall picture, which
so
showed
harm
record
in
abuse.
care has risen by 4%.
Yeah.
Can I speak to that harm and what that harm is, so that people have an understanding of what that is?
Yes, you can.
Because 60% of the harm that happens to children in care doesn't happen at the hands of the caregivers or a person that is caring for those children. It could be anything from schoolyard bullying to a perfect stranger attacking a kid walking to school, which is outside of the control of Oranga Tamariki.
Yeah.
Now that we know that...
She does say it could be, though. That could's doing quite a lot of heavy lifting. I mean, unless you've got stats that say these kids, 20% of them were attacked on the way to school, it could be means in the way they report data, yeah, it could be any one of those things. But is it those things? She doesn't address that. We don't know.
60% are harmed outside of their caregivers and the people caring for them. It's our job to work with other agencies, to work with education around bullying in school, and to work in those areas of prevention of harm in communities.
Right. So you were criticised by the Children's Commissioner and the Independent Children's Monitor for cherry-picking the numbers, right? For focusing on that good stat, while at the same time ignoring in your press releases the concerning stat that showed that harm and abuse in state care had just reached record levels in New Zealand. But when you were asked about it by Newstalk ZB, you said the statistics were measuring different things. Quote, the harm I'm talking about, the decrease in residences, is serious harm, you said. But for the stats that showed recorded abuse in the wider system reaching record levels, you said, quote, that harm could be anything, low level, high level. So where in Oranga Tamariki's annual report does it distinguish between the seriousness of harm recorded in state residences versus the seriousness of harm and abuse recorded in wider state care?
Yeah, that interview that I had that morning, my understanding of what we were speaking to was a bit different, so my apologies. What I thought we were speaking to was the reports of concern and the issues that have risen in the area of reports of concern. I was speaking to the harm reduction within youth justice residences, and I might have got a bit confused about what I was speaking to that morning.
To be totally clear though, and we can it's good that you're saying.
So interesting response, eh? So she's mea culpaing that she got it wrong. Now, part of me kind of goes, this is all we ask of our politicians, that when they're wrong, they step up and say, I got it wrong. But you can also ask the question, in the position of power and influence that she's in, should she not actually understand better what they're talking about when they ask the question around harm? If there are two different things, should she not get it? Or is it fair enough to say everyone will go, oh, sorry, I didn't realize that's what you're meaning? Because she does mea culpa here, but she still was referencing, she's saying now, referencing the wrong thing. Would she have come out referencing that wrong statement if Jack hadn't asked her about it, or would it just been left to float across the internet and across the radio station airwaves, Chewie?
Yeah, I was just sitting here thinking, well, this is actually, I mean, not too bad. It's someone acknowledging a mistake.
Yeah.
Which I always want a politician to be able to do that, because the alternative is you try and cover it up. Now, the bad part of this is the cherry picking of stats and putting it out in a social media post of, yay us, look what we've done. She's kind of gone, oh, no, I did correct that in the House.
Who
but
watches the
didn't
House?
Correct what you, yeah, exactly. How many people are watching what's going on in the House versus who saw it on Facebook and just saw the post and are now
but not even
that.
Not even just saw it, then read the report by a journalist who currently doesn't have enough time to look into it properly, so they just regurgitated the press release points without delving any deeper. Because I did see this heading last week, I didn't see any journalists pushing back against it. So that journalist who's written that piece for Stuff, or for whoever not picking on Stuff, has done it based on the and they've phoned up asking her a few questions. Yep, cool, thank you. They've written their article. They haven't been watching the House to pick up the other part, which hasn't been mentioned in the press release. So then it goes from the press release to the media, from the media to the people, then it's truth. And unless you are as well prepared as Jack Tame, you don't know what else to push back on. And not many are in that world of mainstream media interviewing places.
Yeah, so then it becomes a question of personal integrity. And I know I might be hoping for a little bit too much than what's on offer here, but I would give her full credit if we saw that sign of integrity, and we haven't seen it. Like her background as someone that has been through the foster system and that sort of thing, she knows this from her own lived experience that this is important. And I realize that she's on a team that does not give a fuck about these kids.
Yeah.
But I wish that her experience would enable a little bit of empathy to go, oh, Jesus, it's not just about the stats and just putting out a post on Facebook. These are real fucking people.
Yeah. All right.
And I don't see that from her.
This has got about 60 seconds.
Because we can clear this up.
My apologies.
But you were very clearly asked,
Yeah.
are you cherry picking the numbers? And you confidently asserted that they measure different things. You even
measure different things.
You even gave an example of the kinds of low level, your words, minor incidents that you said were being recorded in the overall stats. Yep. And this is what you said, quote, I guess it's recordings, like within the MSAs, where we had 2 recordings of harm. One was a cut finger and one was sunburn. Yep. But on page 130 of its report, under definitions of abuse, Oranga Tamariki clearly says that all abuse reported in that report under the official stats has to be deliberate. So the only way the cut finger would be recorded as if it were a stabbing.
That would come under the recordings that we do within our residences. So every recording of harm or that needs medical attention does get recorded. I apologise for that. My assumption was we were speaking to the extra recordings and extra incidences that were coming along. And that would be the reason for the higher recordings. With the training, we've got a higher level of recordings, but we're able to analyse the level of harm within residents.
Yeah, but I mean, the reason I don't buy that completely, I mean, I'm a bit torn because, like as we've both just said, you want them to admit when they're wrong. But if she used the example of the cut finger and linked it to why it's not abuse, well, we know that's not abuse because it wasn't the caregiver grabbing the kid's finger and cutting it, because it has to be an action to be the abuse. So there is still some missing data between what she's saying here, what she was saying, and what she was meaning back then as well. I've got one more clip, Chewie, about FASD, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, which they talked about. But did you want to pick up on anything else here first?
No, let's move on.
So this was a really interesting question. Fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, I believe, is the correct anagram. Is that the right one? Anyway, and asking about access to alcohol, and if access to alcohol increases the chances of fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And obviously the answer to that is yes. And so how can Karen, as the minister in charge of these vulnerable children, also support easier access in vulnerable communities to alcohol? Those things seem to be incongruent with one another, which is a very fair question.
So the Ministry of Health's FASD action plan says 50% of children and young people in the care of Oranga Tamariki could be affected by FASD. 50%.
Wow.
Would you agree, in principle, that alcohol availability impacts the likelihood that someone might drink while pregnant?
Well, you also have to look at that as well. We have to be very careful that we're not being judgmental of parents that have kids that end up with
we do
this.
agree that that's a component.
Yeah.
She's not aware of the political party she belongs to. We have to be careful not to be judgmental of parents when her party and her party's allies have just spent the past 2 years telling drop-kick layabout parents to make a Marmite sandwich for their kids. But now we have to be careful not to be too judgmental of parents. It's funny how their perspective changes when they want to sow a certain narrative, isn't it?
Very careful that we're not being judgmental of parents that have kids that end up with
we do
this.
agree that that's a component.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
But we have to be very careful, because then we put this label on parents that have a baby born this way. Some mothers may not have even known they were pregnant when this happened.
Yeah.
So behaviour wouldn't change because they didn't know they were pregnant at the time. So I just want to be very careful that we're not labelling a lot of these parents.
But you've just said that alcohol availability could be a component.
Alcohol is the cause
Could
of
be.
it, right?
Yes.
So of course alcohol is a factor. in
Yeah.
that.
Right. So your government's just agreed on a plan to loosen liquor laws, making it harder to block liquor licences, allowing more places to have both on and off licences. If 50% of the kids in state care have FASD, why did you support making alcohol easier to access?
The good news around actual alcohol consumption.
Answer the question. Answer the question. It's a great question. Answer it.
Why did you support making alcohol easier to access?
The good news around actual alcohol consumption in this country is that we have a higher number, especially in our younger generation, that are actually not purchasing high-level
Nothing
alcohol.
to do with the
The
question.
lower level, the zero alcohol, is actually becoming more popular. Drinking habits are changing, and we as a country need to be careful when we're making these decisions that we're not actually stopping something, but actually education around alcohol and education around the use of alcohol is a biggie.
We've always had education around drinking while pregnant, right? I mean, if you buy a drink, there is a sticker on the side that says don't drink this while pregnant, and yet we've ended up with 50% of the kids, an estimated 50% of the kids in state care having FASD.
Yeah.
So,
But like I said, we also don't have to have the assumption that every single one of those parents knew they were pregnant when they consumed alcohol.
No,
Yeah.
but by increasing alcohol availability,
The chances
potentially you
are.
will increase the likelihood that children are born with FASD in the future.
No, we have to have education in our community rather than...
Education like a sticker on the side of the bottle.
Well, not just a sticker on a bottle, because if you don't know you're pregnant at the time...
This is a bit like that American conversation where they talk about guns, and the Republicans want, when a bad thing happens with guns, they talk about mental health issues, we need help for mental health, but then they won't fund it. So it's like, okay, Karen, excellent, Minister, let's have more education. What are you doing about that now? Because it's easier to say, let's have more education. What funding are you now putting into that education to talk about the dangers of alcohol? Because I haven't seen any. But you're saying we should do it, and that's the offset to fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. One of the things is education. So what are you doing? What is your government doing to make that education happen? Because I ain't seeing anything. You can say the words, but if you're going to believe that, which I don't believe you're going to do it, but using it isn't out right now. That's what I believe. But if you do believe it and you do want to use that, cool. I agree that education is a really important thing around these issues. So now get onto it. Now pay for the education, Minister, because that's what you need to do to follow up.
She's just throwing out words like they're smoke grenades. Like, I don't believe a single thing in it, because her party and her government have very clearly anchored their position on, if your kid does crime, then they should go straight to fucking boot camp or jail, and it's the parents' fault. Like,
whoa! Don't be too judgy on parents. Whoa!
Yeah,
Chewie.
All of her party supporters would be saying, well, if you can't raise the kids, then you shouldn't have the kids.
Yeah, of course.
Bloody kids, and you're all on fucking welfare and that sort of thing. So for her to go on Q&A and go, oh, no, we've just got to be very understanding of, they may not have known that they were pregnant, blah, 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 blah. It's so disingenuous. It's that case of, like, coming from someone else, those words might have meant something.
Yeah.
They mean nothing coming out of Karen.
Coming from someone who works in that field, who is trying to educate kids, who is fighting for the funding, that'd mean something. From this group, who are not spending money on any of that kind of education, to say we need more education, all right, so now how do we do it? And there is no answer. Let me just say one thing as well, because I see there's some chat going on about fetal alcohol syndrome, etc., etc. It was called fetal alcohol syndrome. America still calls it fetal alcohol syndrome. But yeah, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder is the new label for it, a neurodevelopmental disorder caused by alcohol exposure before birth. So that's what it is now. And I'm assuming it makes more sense because fetal alcohol syndrome was probably on a spectrum. In other words, didn't impact all kids the same. So it's now described as a spectrum disorder. This has just got, how long has this got to go? Just a few seconds. Maybe 45 seconds. We'll get to the end of it.
A sticker on a bottle saying don't drink while you're pregnant is not going to make much difference if you don't actually know you're pregnant. So it's also education about moderation and about how we're drinking. And as a society, we have changed the way we're
moderation when
drinking.
you're pregnant?
I didn't say that. I said moderation in alcohol, because you're saying that all women that drink have the potential of causing harm to their babies. And so we should reduce alcohol so that women can't drink.
No, is it not the case that women who are pregnant and choose to drink are risking harm?
I think she thought that was a gotcha all of a sudden. So you saying that women shouldn't be able to drink, Jack? Well, no. You're saying education, and Jack's saying, like, what? So where is the education coming from? He's kind of saying exactly what we're saying.
Also that women can't drink?
No, is it not the case that women who are pregnant and choose to drink are risking harm to their babies?
If a woman are pregnant and are choosing to drink like that, then yes, it does increase a higher risk for that baby.
But choosing to drink anything, right?
Well, I don't have the stats in front of me, so I couldn't tell you, because some people say a glass of wine doesn't harm a child, and some people say it does. I wouldn't personally drink while I was pregnant.
Some people say.
Because no alcohol is better than any alcohol, and that would be the message that I would say.
So there you go, Karen Chhour on Q&A with Jack. Mixed bag. I mean, she didn't come out of it looking great. She did mea culpa. She gets some credit for that. But then again, as Jack pointed out, it was incredibly specific, the question that was asked. So that means that there's only really one or two possibilities on Newstalk ZB. If it was incredibly specific, she either fudged it on purpose, in other words, she told a mistruth, or she didn't understand the question, and either of those is concerning, Chewie.
Yeah, but this is all of my anger about her portfolio. Is it's so critical, like if it's handled poorly, if it's under-resourced, if the minister in charge of it isn't across this sort of stuff and leading from the front, you are talking about kids that are doomed. And like you mentioned, these residences are what that would have been called a borstal. If you walked into one, you would find it very hard to tell it apart from a prison. Right. And it comes down to the colours on the walls and that sort of thing. They for a lot of them, you are locked up. There is a curfew. You're under lock and key, and you're under supervisory staff and all of that sort of stuff. It's incredibly confronting to think that young kids, young teens, older teens are in that sort of environment. And I think any society that doesn't do everything it can to avoid putting kids in that situation, and especially since we've had the results of the Abuse and State Care Commission. Like, I want to see that the government has learned something from this, but we've crashed straight into boot camps and increased harm. I will give her a little bit of credit. I personally found the clarification about what they're tracking as far as harm in state care.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, it's not necessarily that they're being abused by their caregivers or whatever. Hey, look, there's a larger umbrella, but it's kids getting harmed. So, what are you doing? What are you doing to stop it? What are you doing to make sure that this isn't just a prison pipeline?
We're going to move on. But before we move on, I just want to say to our lovely patrons that we love you all to bits. And I would often do this at the start of the show, but I thought we'd do it now. Thank you for being a part of what we do, patrons. We love you guys to bits. I want to mention some people in particular that have become patrons in the last week. There may be some people who have changed their levels up or down of patronage. I haven't got a list of that yet. But I want to say good evening and thanks to Matthew Stokes, to Deborah Kipper, to Sarah Sutherland, to Andy, to Johan Nichols, to Kushla Harris Birch, to Linda, to Danielle Buick, and to Mrs. Crow, who have all become patrons in the last 7 days. We are attempting to make it to 500 patrons by Christmas. If you like what we do and you want to support what we're doing, just asking you to think about it. Don't have to do anything now. Don't rush into it, because we're looking at Waitangi, going back to Waitangi, taking more than just me and my missus up, and the patrons are the people who enable us to plan for next year. We're also we'll talk more about this maybe later in the week. We're also planning some perhaps debates and stuff around the country for next year. The patrons are the people who enable us to kind of look at that. And at the moment, I think if I look, Chewie, I heard the kids talking about this on Friday night, and the patronage says 600 and something patrons. There's a whole bunch of free ones in there. You can sign up to be a free patron. I don't know why you do that with us, because you don't get anything for being a free patron, because we're horrible people. But at the moment, I think we're at 475. So it's 25 away. We started on about 450 something. So thank you very much for you people, about 20-ish people in the last 2 weeks. It's very generous of you. If you've been thinking about it for a while, yeah, I know it doesn't mean much. Like, what does 480 versus 500 mean? It's something to aim for, something we can aim for, and if we can get to 500 before Christmas, that would be cool. Okay, do you want to do some super chats while I get the next story lined up?
Yeah, absolutely. Just a couple of them. A little bit of wordplay here. It's a chore listening to Karen.
Uh-huh.
And Mr. Arvids with Crimes of Kindness. Yeah. I'm not going to highlight the chat, but I noticed that there is somebody new in the chat there.
Welcome in.
Who may not necessarily agree with what we're saying or the positions that we're taking, and that's fine.
How dare they? How dare they be here and not agree with us?
This is the first time I've seen their name in the chat, so I'm just going to do a little greeting. Look, we are very definitely on the left. And what I think you need to understand where our positions and our thought process comes from is generally from a place of empathy and a place of trying to understand things.
Soy boy.
Yeah. But as I mentioned in the chat to you are more than welcome here. You are welcome to be part of the debate and push back against this. We may refer to you as a crunchy because the crunchy croutons in the soup make it better. But this sort of goes out to anyone that might wonder it. If you're going to have a discussion about this sort of stuff, try and avoid the cheerleading. Okay? Have a discussion with people, because in the chat, you have a range of people with a range of different backgrounds and experiences and qualifications. And in your hosts here, you have two different backgrounds and points of view as well. I get kind of a little bit heated when we're talking about kids in state care, because I very, very, very got close to being one.
And I get very angry when we talk about the offside rule because I love rugby. Is that about where we sit? Is that about the?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Pat talks about sports sometimes. I'm furious. But look, I had a lot of benefits when I was a kid. I had a mother that would really, really fight for me, and I had some teachers that tried to take a different approach in various things, and I had people that tried to understand my position, and that's why I didn't end up in a borstal or a residential home, and God knows what it would have happened to me. Now, under this government, all of that would be disregarded, and you made a comment in the chat of like blame the colonizers. Look, it's a flippant comment, but if you disregard the fact that there are different cultures in this country and there is a colonial background, then you are missing the cause of a whole bunch of stuff. So I understand why you're saying that, because you're coming from the other team, and this is how people interact on social media, and this is what we're trying to solve with BHN. We can't have these little dip-ins and everybody throws their slogans and nobody fucking listens. We try to have discussions about this. So
and let me say this. Stick with us. I don't know who we're talking about, but stick with us, because what we also are is fair, right? Now, we're partisan, because we sit on the left, like every announcer or contributor you listen to or watch is partisan. The difference is we will tell you we're partisan. We will tell you where we sit. Others won't. Others will be like, no, I'm a journalist and I don't take sides. It's all bullshit. That's all smoke and mirrors. We're honest. We'll tell you where we sit, but then we'll be fair. And if you don't think we're fair, wait till tonight we talk about Chewie on Q&A and Te Pāti Māori, for example. Then you'll see how we're also fair with what we do, because we don't care about, and I think all media should be like this. People who say you should be neutral are morons. No, you should be accurate. Doesn't matter where you come from politically. If what you're saying is accurate, that's all that matters. Now, a lot of what we do is opinion, and opinions are like arseholes. Everybody's got one, except Christopher Luxon. I heard he doesn't. Anyway, everyone's got one, and sometimes our opinions will be right, and sometimes they'll be wrong. But when we're talking to the issues and the facts, we will be accurate. And when we get it wrong, we will mea culpa. So there you go. And if there's anything else that you need to know, East has just explained that if there's any problems, you just blame it on the boogie. Don't blame it on the boogie. Blame it on the sunshine. And Wellington Ruru says, late fee, I disagree. What are we talking about? You got the gist of the whole thing. So
the other thing that I did see a Facebook comment thread that was getting pretty heated about politics, and then someone waded in all caps and go, I have no strong opinions either for or against. Good day.
All right. And also just remember,
that person's doing well. Or
just
not.
remember as well, and you know I'm like this, Chewie, about feeding the trolls. If they're just being trolling to troll sake, then it's pointless even engaging. Just remember that. Thank you for your text, however I pronounce your name. I appreciate it. All right, let's get to one of those. Let's talk about Te Pāti Māori, because, this is not a good look for Te Pāti Māori, and that actually means it's not a good look for the left, because there is no evidence anywhere of any polling anywhere where Labour and the Greens could make a government together. So if you are, like many here, keen to have a left-led government, then what's happening in Te Pāti Māori at the moment is not good for you. Let's have a listen to the story.
Greed, avarice and entitlement. Just some of the barbs being thrown around today with a very public escalation of the ongoing infighting within Te Pāti Māori. Party President John Tamihere is now urging MPs Maria Meno Kapakingi and Takuta Ferris to quit Parliament. This coming amid calls for Tamihere to step down himself so the party can return to a more collective approach. Te Aniwa Hurihanganui joins us now for more on this. There have been some heated exchanges. Tell us what's being said.
Well, Te Pāti Māori President John Tamihere has today made an extraordinary statement on social media, calling the conduct of both Maria Meno Kapakingi and Takuta Ferris greedy and entitled. This comes just days after Takuta Ferris declared publicly his support for Maria Meno and declared a vote of no confidence in the party's leadership. John Tamihere is now also alleging that the two of them have been seeking support to overthrow co-leaders Rawiri Waititi and Stevie Ngarewa Peka. And he claims that after failing to do this internally, according to Tikanga, they have resorted to destabilising the party. So some pretty hefty claims there. Maria Meno Kapakingi told One News over the phone that the only way she will leave Parliament is if the people of Te Tai Tokiro, her electorate, tell her it's time to go. This is, of course, the latest in a very long and messy spat for Te Pāti Māori, and it's unclear yet how they will resolve these clearly deep divisions within the party.
Now, there's a lot to talk about here, yeah? And one of the things, Chewie, to talk about here is even though it was sticky and uncomfortable, and a lot of us were like, why are we airing this dirty laundry now? It goes to show that when there was a challenge and a problem within the Greens, the way they handled it was night and day compared to what's going on here. It was night and day, and it was always the idea of still a united front, wanting what's best overall for the Greens. This feels very different. The online statement that they were talking about is here. I'm not going to read the whole thing because, as you can see, he had some feels.
Oh, damn.
That is, yeah. Yeah, I'll just give you the first couple of paragraphs from John Tamihere. The Anatomy of Madness. In 2017, Te Pāti Māori was vanquished. People forget that. Remember the Maori Party at the time, the Māori Party, Te Pāti Māori were no longer in government. From Parliament and lay in disarray until the new executive group joined the party, led by Shay Wilson as president, Rangi McLean as vice president, Tane and Kapua Smith as Vice President Wahine, Elijah Pue, probably, as Treasurer, Rose Waitford as the Secretary. I joined the party in 2019 supporting my son-in-law's ambitions, Rawiri. In the Waiariki electorate, I also became the candidate for Tāmaki Makaurau in the 2020 election. The party won its way back to Parliament via an astonishing win in the Waiariki. Te Pāti Māori was the only political force that was able to take votes from the Labour Party as it surged to a majority government. Rawiri was joined by Debbie Ngaruapaka as a list member. These two co-leaders in Parliament set the platform for the magnificent result which occurred in 2023. I was made president 6th of March 2021. As president, the priority was also on rebuilding the party's backbone. Everything needed to be rebuilt from the ground up: systems, processes, resources, at a time where there was no resourcing, little support, and even less belief that it could be achieved. And it goes on. I don't know, what is it, 2,000 words? There's a lot of feels there. If you want to check it out for yourself, John Tamihere is a public Facebook profile page. Now, it's really interesting. Like I've heard rumours, and I obviously won't say who they're from, and they're not from any person who is an elected official, that they have the numbers to move John Tamihere on his way, and also that potentially they've got the numbers to roll Debbie and Rawiri. Now, whether they do that or don't, I don't know. I've heard that there are frictions between Hana and Debbie Ngaruapaka, and that maybe Hana would abstain from a vote, meaning that the leaders could be rolled. It's sticky. It is really sticky. I also know that you have this idea of a leader for such a time as this, and I don't know John Tamihere very well. We broadcast at the same time, and I sold him a house. He is, when I say a force of nature, I'm sort of using that neutrally, neither good nor bad. I mean, I can imagine he could be the biggest asshole in the world going after what he wants, but he could also be a really forceful leader taking people with him. And when I hear about the 2017 through 2023, I wonder if and I don't know, okay, this is now me, just my feels, right? This is through no conversation with people, but I wonder, Chewie, if they needed someone who was going to grab that party by the scruff of the neck and go, we're going this way. And I mean, authoritarian, whatever, just direct leadership. But now that the party is forming around several people, there's a tight grip from the president on how things need to go. And now that it doesn't quite need that, and this is just, if it doesn't quite need that, it's not quite affecting as well. You know, you always think about things like, I mean, I often relate things to church groups because that's my background. You have these people who run churches who are very sort of controlling and authoritarian. There's obviously lots of bads about that, but within the system of that church, the good thing is things get done. Like things get achieved because this person is driving it. And you have those other group of those kinds of churches where people are like, oh, it's all good, you know, yeah, if you want to do that, do that. But then often nothing gets done. And everyone just kind of floats along and does nothing. I wonder if it's a bit the same in leadership at the moment within Te Pāti Māori, that at 2020 it needed to be like a come with me, you know, or get the fuck out of the way. And now there are people of those MPs who are feeling this is not the style of leadership I want. Again, this last 2 minutes is just me, right? Nothing that anyone's told me, but that was the kind of things I was wondering around at Chewie.
Yeah, it's a strange thing. Like if anything to do with politics and leadership, you know, sometimes it's a double-edged sword, right? You've got a very powerful personality. You can let people follow you, but it can be really, really divisive. John Tamihere deserves some credit for taking a party, as he said, that was eviscerated and rebuilding it. That's phenomenal. Doesn't often happen, right? And now the question becomes: is he the right person for that party right now?
Yeah, sort of. What
now
I'm saying.
I would probably say what we're seeing is it's not the temperament for the moment. And what we have here is like Te Pāti Māori, with the assistance of the Toitu movement, had an enormous amount of momentum.
Yeah.
Enormous amount of momentum. And now it's really, really messy. Like, we've got some huge personalities and some hopefully glorious futures ahead of some of the people that we've been talking about here. I've followed, obviously, a lot of the stuff around the RSB, that Ferris was involved in, and his input into that committee, that submissions process. He's obviously a very, very smart cookie. And I was really, really impressed with him. So I'm probably more inclined to side with him in this point. And I'm really gutted about that, because we've had Rawiri and we've had Debbie on the show a couple of times. We like to think that there's a relationship here, but like Te Pāti Māori is definitely got some speed wobbles at the moment. And I think we're looking on going, come on guys, recover. We need this sorted ASAP.
But then the next question has to be, and you know, whānau, I'll often come back to the game of politics, is Te Pāti Māori on some, it's a little bit like Tariana Turia and Peter Sharples back in the day were seen as quite moderate and centrist. And they've started to maybe move to their more natural place on the political, and Debbie Ngarewa and Rawiri are not Peter Sharples and Tariana Turia, but they're also not sitting in the kind of activist position as much, not saying that they're not activists, but as much as perhaps Doc and Mariamino, and, you know, obviously Eru is not a part of this, but in that kind of world. If it goes that path, will then the public go, will that actually be a thing that the public goes, well, actually, you know, I could understand these kind of more senior politicians being involved with Labour to put my vote to Labour, it'll be safe. But these kind of quote unquote young upstarts now running this party, am I going to trust the future of this country to them being the casting vote? Oh no, I better, if I'm a centre left, centre right voter, I better give this to Luxon just for safety. You know what I mean? It's like, what does that then mean for that narrative that the right is already painting and will continue to paint, that this is going to be a disruptive force on the country?
What I found really interesting is there's this call from iwi leadership to have a forum, a get together, a clearing of the air, sort of thing. And I think everyone should pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Because what is happening now, this tearing and ripping of flesh and everybody airing it in a fucking Facebook manifesto, is not doing anybody any good. And I think the Māori leadership recognise this, and they're like, right, well, we've got to right the boat here. We've got to have some sort of like unified direction here.
Yeah.
And I just hope people pay attention to that, and that they do sort of take this offline for a little bit, and go back to their kaupapa, go back to their people, and go, all right, it's got a bit out of hand. What are we going to do?
Then the other thing is, and the name that I can't say, Tis and Tai Love. This is the other thing, because probably Hana and Orini are vulnerable in an election, because Orini's new, obviously not many people participated in the by-election, but vulnerable, and Hana won by like the thinnest of votes. Are you going to get people like our viewer right now? I voted for TPM and Hana 100. I think I'll just be changing my vote next time. I'm actually gutted at what I'm witnessing as I'm witnessing their demise. So Hana getting in was amazing. Like I don't know if she's in New York at the moment, but has been in New York for the top 100 most influential, citizens of the world under 25 or whatever it is. It's amazing. And we all remember the haka, and most people watching remember it with absolute, the fondness that it was. But when it comes to her electorate seat, it was a really slim margin. And will this shakiness, or will this boat rocking be the thing that changes 5% of the votes in her electorate? And then is she gone? And then is Labour going to take 2 or 3 of those seats back, and then there's going to be 2 Te Pāti Māori MPs, and then what? So I was frustrated with the Greens leadership thing. I thought it was a bit naff and a bit airy-fairy, and it didn't feel like it was, maybe for me at the time, it wasn't actually directional enough. But compared to this, it was the gold standard. Compared to this, this is bad. This is bad. It's bad for Te Pāti Māori in general. And like we've said a couple of times, it feels like the difference between Te Pāti Māori and Toitu Te Tiriti, they're 2 groups that I want to, and I think I can say we want to get behind and support. And it feels like we've got a Christmas party coming up this week, and our 2 best mates are fighting. And does that mean we have to ask Knight? We can't ask either of them to come to the party, because if they both turn up, there's going to be a scrap. And if we only ask one of them, then we're going to put the other one. We're kind of sitting here stuck in the middle, going, what can we do here?
Just so I'm clear on your analogy here, have you invited Tamihere and Ferris to the Christmas party?
John Tamihere,
ambitious.
John Tamihere, I've messaged him a few times in the last year, and every time I say, do you want to come on, he says no. So I don't think we've got any trouble with that one. Okay. But you know what I'm saying? It's these two groups that you're looking at and going, at the heart of their kaupapa, they're both really important, and they both really need to be successful, and they both really need to be kind of helped when they need help. Not white savior complex, not reading the white hat, but when if they want help, to be able to call on and be able to support them. And it's just like, don't know what to do. It's like, it's not, I mean, I'm exaggerating saying my 2 best friends, but like if my 2 best friends hated each other and my 21st birthday was coming up, what do I do? If my girlfriend and my best mate were hating each other, you can pick which is the girlfriend, which is the best mate. They hated each other. How do you have a birthday party? It's really hard.
2 of my favourite political moments in the last 12 months. It's a no-brainer. They're both revolving around Te Pāti Māori and the Toitu movement, the RSB hikoi, and Hana's tearing up the bill. Are the 2 most jaw-dropping, I'm fucking proud of this stupid little Briscoes country moments that I've had in years. So that's why it's important that we need Te Pāti Māori to succeed. We need them to be firing on all cylinders, and at the moment they're not.
All right. Quick chat here from the proletariat. Just says, real talk, boys. I'm Labour supporter, but I'm super mad at TPM for the chaos. It's hurting the left. John needs to go. There you go. And I guess when I was offering feels before and thoughts before, it's just like I'm more saying, does he need to go? Is this time? Like, because I'm thinking about John Tamihere and I'm going, if he needs to go, if that's what's best for Te Pāti Māori, then he should choose to move on. Unless it's about more than what is best for Te Pāti Māori and John Tamihere. Maybe if it was about someone being what's best for John Tamihere, then maybe he wouldn't. And I'm not saying that's the case. I have no idea. But if this is what was best for the movement, then you would hope that John would just go, for the sake of the movement, I'll move on. That means the two leaders we've got can continue on, rebuild relationships, mend fences, and get going, or whatever. I don't know. One more, because Lurchi's been very generous. Thank you for your super chat, Lurchi. It's lovely generous. TPM reckons every party in Parliament have had their rogue MP. Sadly, it's Te Pāti Māori currently, correct. We seem to be assessing the credibility of the accused, JT, and not understanding the accusers. Both need examination. Yeah, and look, I mean, yeah, fair, 100% fair. I guess I'm just looking at it going, where to from here? That's really where I'm sitting at. Where to from here, and how do we I'm not going to pick sides. I don't think we should pick sides. I don't know enough about the inner workings to see one's definitely right and one's definitely wrong. It probably comes down to something in the middle, as is always. And there's probably egos, and there's probably disappointment, and there's probably, desires to, have the right direction. And this person thinks that's the right direction, and the other person thinks that's the right direction. And I mean, I think all of us can be honest with ourselves and go, there's been times that we've got the wrong end of the stick and pushed back somewhere that we haven't. I don't know which one of the groups is got the wrong end of the stick and which one is pushing back they don't need to. I don't know whether that's Te Pāti Māori, whether that's John Tamihere, whether that's the leadership, whether that's, I don't know. But chances are one of them's pushing back when they shouldn't be. I don't know who that is though. Anyway.
Yeah, right. I think I'm going to echo something I'm very sure I said when Green Party was having its leadership things, is that this is a question for the membership of the party. So yeah, we can say whatever we want. We're not part of the party.
But I also this is the thing from that previous texter, is like I am for these two entities. I want them to work and survive and thrive and be an impact from my place in the political spectrum. But that doesn't mean we can't say at the moment things are looking pretty shit and we need to figure out why. Because it is. We're not going to shade it, back away from it, and we're not going to go like, it's all good. No, the media is overblowing it. The media probably is overblowing it a bit, but there's still some there that we need to figure out or have figured out for us. All right. Just a quick bit from ZB this morning with our hairless leader. It's only like 90 seconds, and there's been some work done, but I think by, what are they called? Something in pause, the credit agency. Credit agency has basically told this government that their plan, Water Done Well, is going to cost more than 3Waters did. Now, how does this government, who are the government of solutions and answers, going to address a system that they have, which is not going to be as effective, which is not going to work as well, and now be more expensive? I'm just getting this vibe of like ferries all over again, but this is for our infrastructure. Maybe it's anything to do with water, Chewie. Maybe they've got a blind spot if water's involved with it, like the ferries and like the water infrastructure. Let's have a listen to Mike Hosking talking to Christopher Luxon this morning.
The Commissioner, he does a really good job, and he's very happy to be very upfront and confront those issues when and where they do appear, and that's a good thing.
All right, Standard & Poor's say that Water Done Well is going to be more expensive than the Labor alternative. Part of their reason is that, of course, the debt mechanism you've set up for councils to borrow could lead councils into some real debt trouble. If it all goes wrong, the water entity is the one that ends up in the problem, but the bill goes back to the councils. Any regrets on that?
No.
Or it is what it is?
No, look, I mean, Labor spent $1.2 billion on 3Waters and it went nowhere. We went to the credit agencies, S&P, and said, give us some financial structures that actually give the balance sheet separation, and so that those entities can actually borrow long-term debt over long-run assets and separate them out from councils. And I think we've got to a very, very good place.
But that's what S&P is saying. S&P is saying, well, yes, you've separated it out, but a council goes in up to their eyeballs in debt, they borrow more, then their water entity runs into trouble. Suddenly the council's bankrupt.
Yeah, but the whole point is, council should be...
So just remember that, Whānau. I know that you all know this, but to let anyone new here, that the previous plan was basically centralised government funding infrastructure around our 3Waters. Now, remember, and we use this example all the time, Gore has 50,000 ratepayers. Gore has a $300 million bill to actually get their 3Waters up to scratch. That means every ratepayer has how many did I say? 6,000 ratepayers? I hope I did, because that's what it's supposed to be. But that means every ratepayer is up for 50 grand. 50 grand for every ratepayer. So therefore, if this is not going to be paid for by central government, which means, yes, if you're in Whangarei, you are contributing to Gore's water. Sure. If you're in Christchurch, maybe Dunedin's contributing to your water. It's how we do lots of other things like hospitals and that kind of stuff as well. If we're not going to do it that way, all that cost is going to fall onto the Gore District Council to get them fixed, and interest on top, and to be paid for in their rates. So when he says it's a better solution still, I'm not sure. And so what they're saying now is Standard & Poor's have said, so if then it goes tits up, however that works, whether it's whether the infrastructure blows out or whatever when it comes to cost, then a council could go bankrupt under this system. And he's challenging, about as much as Mike Hosking would ever challenge this Prime Minister, him to going, the Standard & Poor's is actually warning you that this is not as good a solution as maybe you think it is. And that's where we're sort of at.
S&P is saying, well, yes, you've separated it out, but if council goes in up to their eyeballs in debt, they borrow more, then their water entity runs into trouble. Suddenly the council's bankrupt.
Yeah, but the whole point is, councils should be financed to a certain level of debt borrowing that they can do as councils. But when you actually have water entities that have assets that are 30, 50, 70 years long, the problem was that councils were funding those assets out of short-term money. And what they can now do is, like, you can get a mortgage for a house that you pay off over 30 years. It's the same thing here as well. So, no, I'm really...
So Gore will have $300 million to pay off over 30 years. Let's work that out, shall we? So $300 million, so that's what, $10 million a year to pay off? So that means plus interest. So where's my calculator? So 10 million, divided by 6,000 ratepayers. So Gore's rates are going up by an additional, let's call it $1,700 a month before interest gets added. So if they're going to pay that 300 million off over 30 years, people of Gore, your rates have instantaneously gone up by minimum $1,700 a year. So this is the solution.
And am I wrong here? By his logic, it would be better to have it under central government, right? Because central government has access to better return rates because it's governmental and it's spread out over a larger population. It's just such muddled thinking, and we're always going to come back to Gore because there's lots of small rural councils out there that are going to get absolutely fucked on this. Because they're just going to talk about Wellington, Christchurch, Auckland, Hamilton, just bigger centres.
Well, it's because the smaller places haven't got the financial base to. I mean, 100 metres of piping in Gore costs the same pretty much as 100 metres of piping in Dunedin, but Dunedin's got a huger population to pay for that 100 metres. And I've just done some numbers as well. If this was borrowed at 1%, and we all know that government stuff get better rates than we can get. If it was borrowed at 1%, so that means in that $300 million Gore fee, there's $3 million of interest in that first year. So that doesn't make it $10 million to pay back. That makes it $13 million to pay back over 6,000 ratepayers, which puts it at $2,166 more per year. So in Gore, if your rates are currently $2.5, $3,000, I think that's pretty standard around the country for a decent sized section, you're now looking at $4.5, $5,000. And this is what Labour was telling you. They were telling you that if you go with us, if you go with centralised, yes, your rates are going to go up, but they might be going up a quarter, a half of what they would be under these guys' plans. You said no. Rural New Zealand, you elected these guys, and now your rates are going to go through the roof because of it. How's that cost of living going, rural New Zealand, eh? This has got...
Who did you vote for, rural New Zealand?
It's only got 15 seconds there. I'll just get that. Actually, I'll go back 5 seconds and just get the last of it.
It's like you can get a mortgage for a house that you pay off over 30 years. It's the same thing here as well. So, no, I'm really comfortable with that. I think actually it's the right solution, which is you've got real assets that you can go borrow against over the long term. You can borrow it at a higher proportion than you could if you were just a council. And all of that just means that you then have the councils freed up to actually, with the cash that they've got, to make sure they're doing the right thing. So, no, I'm very supportive of what we're doing there.
Remember, this is a little side note, coming from a man who at one stage had 7 properties with no mortgage, giving us the example of how you can borrow like a mortgage, like he never does or didn't have to do. No shade, go for you having no mortgage, whatever. But using an example that's something you know nothing about because you don't have one, as you've explained.
I'll probably say
times.
this to my last fucking day, but any politician that relates government borrowing and spending, local government or national level government, to a household budget is treating you like an idiot.
We're going to keep moving, do some chats, and then get straight into Chippy on Q&A, so we can be done before our 2 hours up. E. Grant writes, Nats ended up with LuxCon thanks to Judith. Howie says, everybody watching, give like a click for the algorithm. I know you want to. Ovid says, big people doing big jobs and more expensive things. And Andrew says, went nowhere because you cancelled it, you potato. Yeah. Oh, look, it's the second story tonight that, like, everyone told you guys what was going to happen. We told you. You were told. Not even we. We repeated what the experts said about boot camps, and they did it anyway. We did tell you, because we showed the calculators, what was going to happen with rates, and it's going to happen with rates. Luxon saying, well, they can just borrow against their assets. Gore, $300 million. They just borrow against the assets. Like, okay, then it has to be paid back. These guys are bitching and moaning about the interest that the country is currently paying, allegedly based on borrowing from the last lot, whilst they're telling councils to borrow so then they can pay back the interest. It's just nonsensical. Pisses me off. Let's get a nice light one before we keep going though. Julie says, received my pins today. Listening to you now with my BHN Pat and Chewie pin on. Fantastic. Yeah, tag us in social medias if you did that. I got a few people sent me through a few photos on Blue Sky with them putting on their bags and stuff. And Miss Hunty 808, Tamihere is the pit bull that every successful establishment needs. Right, last one, eh? Let's go into Chippy on Q&A in the weekend, and we're going to start. And I don't like this at all. I think that Labour's missed a step here. I know, Chewie, we're going to don't let, what is it, perfect get in the way of good? Is that the saying? Have I got it right?
Yeah.
But I think Labour has missed something on the inheritance here by not charging an inheritance on not charging a CGT on inheritance. There's a caveat, and I'll tell you about it shortly, because these guys did a really bad job asking about it, and they didn't give out the details. So I did some work today, actually spoke to someone in the Labour Party to get the absolute update as to what it was about how the inheritance things work. So capital gains tax on inherited properties, what happens there?
There is no capital gains tax if you inherit a property, as per your policy this week. Given older New Zealanders own the majority of assets, what is their incentive to sell them?
We heard really clear feedback from New Zealanders that, you know, they work really hard. They want to be able to pass down their family home and maybe their beach house to the next generation. That's something that they've worked over their lifetimes to build up. They want to be able to hand that down to their children. And I recognise that, and I think that is important for New Zealanders to know that they've got the certainty that they'll be able to do that.
Yeah, but how is that any different from someone else who's worked hard and has recently bought a property and wants to sell it in 5 years?
This is ultimately...
They do go round and round in circles here quite a bit, Whānau. I mean, the answer to Jack Tame's question is, why have you drawn a line here, is because we chose to draw a line here. Because it's really the only argument. Because when you're starting to talk about fair, you can go selling a house that you've owned all your life versus inheriting a house. One has no capital gains tax, the other one has. There are some caveats, which these guys don't get to, which I'll explain in a minute. But this is the answer, that political parties make choices. These guys have chosen to not do it on a house that's inherited. Could they have? Yes, they chose not to. And that's the only answer. And Jack's going to go round and round for a while trying to get the answer out of him as to why he did that. And the answer is because we chose to.
Keeping the system as simple as possible. Once you get into inheritance, it raises a whole lot of different issues. And I am not proposing inheritance taxes. I'm very, very clear about that. So I do want New Zealanders to be able to inherit without an extra tax liability.
You've talked about fairness, though. You've used that term multiple times over the course of the last few days. So again, how is it fair that someone who has inherited a property, who's taken no risk whatsoever, who's put no money down whatsoever, who's seen that property increase in terms of capital value, pays zero tax, but a hard-working family who's scrimped and scraped and saved to buy an investment property, they do have to pay a capital gains?
That's an argument you could apply across inheritance of any sort, and we're not proposing an inheritance tax.
Except that this is a capital gains tax that's specifically been put in for what you've called a targeted section of properties and investments. So what is the difference between a property that's owned and is passed down as part of inheritance versus a property that's owned by someone who wants to sell it while they're still alive?
Ultimately, we've made the decision to carve out inheritance. That was a decision that we took after getting a lot of feedback from people.
What's the difference?
Well, it was a decision
that's the answer, because that's the decision we made.
That we took.
And I get that that's going to be frustrating for an interviewer, but that is the question. What then you get into is, why did you make that decision? I don't think that ever quite gets gotten to in this conversation.
Getting a lot of feedback from people that they want to be able to leave their inheritance to their kids and their grandkids.
I'm sure they do, but
we recognise that wherever you draw the line in designing a tax system, there are always going to be trade-offs and compromises.
Yeah. What's the difference?
As I said, we made the decision that we're not going to be taxing
I understand.
inheritance.
What's the difference between one Rosemary Street that's been owned by a baby boomer as part of 10 properties perhaps, who passes that down to someone, that person then pays no capital gains, versus 3 Rosemary Street, which is owned by a young family who've saved up over years to buy that property and decide to sell it while they're alive? What's the difference?
Because one's inherited and one's not.
Right.
Yeah.
And you've decided, even though fairness is driving this policy, that people who've had no skin in the game, taken no risk, put no money in, they're not going to be taxed on their capital gains, whereas people who decide to sell earlier will be.
The primary driver for the policy is encouraging people to invest not in residential property, but actually to invest in productive businesses that create jobs and create opportunities for New Zealanders.
So back to that first question about inheritance though, why would someone who wants to pass down an asset to their children, why would they be incentivised to sell before they die?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jacket, that's a bit of a nonsense question, because why would they be incentivised to sell it? They would sell it if they want the money. So if the 80-year-old wants and needs the money, they'd sell it. If they don't, they'd keep it. So I don't think this would either incentivise or not incentivise. If the retiree wanted money in their account to live off, then they'd sell it. If they didn't want or need it, maybe they'd keep it. I don't think the CGT's got much to do with that.
Be incentivised to hold on to the asset so then their children don't have to pay tax?
People always make a variety of decisions throughout their lives that are the right decisions for them and for their families.
Right. So would you accept that under the inheritance settings as you've laid them out in this policy, this allows or this incentivises asset lock-in?
I mean, ultimately, families make those decisions about when they want to sell things, and that is the case now. Families will already make decisions around how they allocate inheritance now.
What's the incentive though to sell it? Right, if you've got a property that you want to hand down to the next generation, what's the incentive to sell it now and free up property in a constrained property market versus holding on to it for longer than you might have otherwise?
Well, there's a whole range of things that people will consider, not just tax, when they determine whether or not they're going to sell a property. They'll consider property prices, they'll consider the financial situation that they are in, they'll consider the financial situation that their kids are in.
I don't get the sense that a retiree who has multiple properties or who has a property to pass on, I don't get the sense that the capital gains tax will or won't get them to sell or not sell their house any more quickly. Now, I was a bit confused by this, and I think it would be fine to say who I spoke to, but I haven't asked permission, so I won't. And in my mind, I went, so Chewie's dad leaves Chewie a house, no capital gains tax because there's no inheritance tax, but then Chewie, who already has a residence, sells that house, capital gains tax. So I was like, Jax, why isn't this an obvious answer? Isn't it that there would be capital gains tax on a house you inherit it when you sell it? But that's not the case, and this is where I think this is actually bad. This is bad policy. So I'm completely fine for no inheritance tax to pass from a house after inheritance from dad to children. Fine. No money's changed hands. It's a family asset. It was their family home. And then if someone turns it into their family home, let's say it's a single child and they pass the house on and then they live in it, then it becomes their family home. Fine, no problems at all. But normally what happens at this age, if you've got adult children who might be in their 40s, 50s, or even older, typically they'll already have a house, or if they don't, they'd prefer the cash and they then sell it. That means it's not their primary residence. So they should then get charged capital gains tax. So if the inheritance goes to the child as a house and then the child sells it, there should be capital gains tax on that. But under this system, there's not. Let me just read out to you exactly what the text that came back was. So this was how it was explained. Inherit, no tax. Sell, no tax. Inherit but decide to rent, then clock restarts and tax if when sold. So you inherit the house and you sell it straight away, that's tax-free. I think they've missed the mark there. And I don't think this is me doing perfect in the way of good. I think that's a really clear one. If they inherit a house, they pay no tax to inherit it because there's no inheritance tax. If they sell that inherited house straight away, they pay capital gains tax on that. But that's not the way it's been set up, Chewie.
Yeah. Look, inheritance tax is a fucking hand grenade. Like, I can look at other countries. So like England, as an example, has a big issue with inheritance taxes because there's a lot of multi-generational wealth, and there's a question there of like when the second Earl of Gloucester fucking pops his clogs and his son gets all his lands and titles and that sort of thing. Maybe there should be a little bit of ticket clipping here. But I think this, can we just get something across the line? And then
I hear you.
Sort of go, okay, well, we've finally done the fucking thing, and this is what we've found, and now we can look at the next thing of like, how can we make this fairer? How can we make this more effective? That's kind of where I'm at with this.
I hear you, and I think last week I agreed with you that getting something over the line is great and it's important. I just don't think this little one would have taken away, or it would have just been an easy add-on. You inherit the house. There's no inheritance tax, so you don't pay tax on inheriting a house. But once you sell that inheritance, it's not your primary family home. You then pay tax on selling the house, which means if you don't sell it and use it as a rental, you don't pay it then. You then pay it because if you do it as a rental for a year and then sell it, you pay capital gains tax. So if you sell it after a week, capital gains tax. That's the only thing I'm saying I think it should be. That's what I would have done. If I was in charge.
I think inheritance tax can be an absolute fucking minefield. And look, we started the show talking about how National is only dealing in truths and facts in this whole argument, right? So I agree. The answer to Jack's question is this is where we chose the line because this is where we chose to draw it.
Yeah,
is a full and complete answer. We can quibble around it and go, well, wouldn't it be great? My position on this. I'm fully in the Greens camp of like, yep, fucking land value tax, wealth tax, inheritance tax, the whole fucking thing. That would be perfect. Can you convince the electorate? Can you deal with the full court press that you're going to get from the current government? Is, look, we told you they're coming for everything.
Yeah. So
let's just focus on a battle we can fucking win. And that might be a not very exciting, but certainly moving the needle, capital gains tax.
Yeah. And let me just say this one more time so it's clear. The example I'm giving is not an inheritance tax. The example I'm giving is Chewie inherits a house from his mum or dad, whatever it was. If Chewie turns it into a rental for a year and then sells it, he would pay capital gains tax. So therefore, if Chewie then chooses to sell the house immediately, it's capital gains tax. So it's not an inheritance tax because if you don't sell the house, there's nothing to pay until you sell the house in 2, 5, 10 years from now. So that's it.
And look, that's the conversation we're having, right? Fair and reasonable policy. Absolutely agree. But it's in the advertising and marketing, isn't it? It's what can you defend? What can you get across? You're not going to win an election on here is our policy and every conceivable fucking loophole that you can throw at us. We have solved.
Yeah.
Because everybody apparently owns a multi-generational fucking dairy now. Don't forget.
Well, there was another good clip that we're not playing there about like commercial properties are up for capital gains tax. Farms aren't. What about a farm who down the road from the property where the house and the commercial sheds are, there's another commercial shed? How does that, there's no houses or residential area down there, but it's just commercial sheds. What happens there? Which is, and I think, and I wrote it down, and I think Chippy went a little bit too much to it. He said a lot what the quote tax working group had set out, and he said a lot what other markets around the world did, and it kind of felt like it was a bit of a cover-all. Not that I don't want to answer this question, but maybe I don't have an answer to that question right now. So, that was it. Hey, I had one that we're going to talking about means testing for doctors' visits. I think we'll do it. We've got enough time. You will do it. Only a couple of minutes because this is about their flagship sort of announcement at the moment around capital gains tax for doctors, and the question being, the Mowbrays. Why are we giving free doctors visits to the Mowbrays? And that's where this conversation continues.
You and I can both afford to go to the doctor, right? As it stands.
Yep.
New Zealand's in a structural deficit. Debt servicing currently costs us almost $9 billion a year, almost $9,000 million a year. It's forecast to get up to near 11. More than primary education, secondary education, and the entire Ministry of Justice budget combined. And yet, you are going to pay for the 300,000 New Zealanders who earn more than $150,000 a year to go to the doctor for free. Why?
Well, we pay for them to go to the hospital for free if they don't go to the doctor and don't get the medical care that they need to avoid going to the hospital. So I've made the principal decision, as has the Labour Party, has always stood for free.
It's funny because I both agree with what Chippy's saying, because what Chippy's saying is the Labour Party has a policy that medical attention, medical help should be free. That's it, right? But the messaging in this is we don't want them to end up in the A&E, but the point that Jack's making is wealthy people don't end up in that situation because they can afford to go to the doctor. So Jack stays on this position that the people we're talking about, the Mowbrays, they don't end up in the A&E because they haven't gone to the doctor, because they can afford to go to the doctor. So why are we paying for them to go to the doctor? And Chippy's response is twofold. It's Labour believes in a free health system, and we don't want them to go to the A&E, which Jack comes back to. So this is this thing. So I think that answer for Labour, that is, we believe in a free public health system. Done. Why should they get it free? Because our kaupapa, our philosophy, our ideology is giving all New Zealanders free access to healthcare. That should be the stop of the answer, rather than the justification of going, we don't want them to go to A&E when these people aren't going to A&E. In fact, if it was the Mowbrays, they'd be going to the local private hospital and be shipped in on a gold trolley to get the best service in the world by 42 doctors brought in just for them. You know what I mean? I'm obviously being silly, but So
I think this is a stupid question from Jack. Because I understand what it's stoking. Believe me, I think the only healthcare available to the Mowbrays should be none. They should be on an island full of wolves with no healthcare. Like, is that the response?
Is that the response that Chippy should have said? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That the Mowbrays shall be hunted for sport and harvested for meat. That's the answer that I want from Chippy. I'm not going to get it. But that's fine. The Mowbrays having access to 3 free GP visits is such a fucking non-issue that this is embarrassing that it got brought up.
I think the
Mowbrays get 3 free GP visits.
But that's what Chippy should say.
The poor family down the road also get 3 free GP visits because they fucking need them.
And the other thing that needs to be said here, which hasn't been said, and I'm making this assumption based on other coveralls, is that to carve those 300,000 people out would cost more to monitor and do that than it does to actually just give them the 3 free visits anyway. But I just want to be very clear here about Chewie's joke about the Mowbrays being hunted. We do not endorse that or support that in any way, shape, form whatsoever.
I do. I 100%.
No,
my
Chewie
name is Chewie, and I endorse this message.
Yeah, I'll just mute that microphone. So Chewie doesn't endorse that. He can't do anything about it. And that was a joke. Okay, I think he's calm. He looks calm now. I'll turn his mic back on.
Where's my weapon?
All right, we'll keep going.
I scared my dog.
And that should be free healthcare across the board. Because otherwise we're saying to people, if you go
free
to the doctor,
healthcare
you get
across
charged
the
for
board.
that. If you don't go to the doctor and you get even sicker, you go to the hospital for free.
But you've just said that you can afford to go. So for wealthier New Zealanders or New Zealanders on higher income, the cost is no barrier. And we're facing incredibly constrained fiscal environment as it stands. So how can you justify
access to free healthcare should be an entitlement that all New Zealanders benefit from. All New Zealanders pay tax. Those on higher incomes pay more tax. And so they should have access to free universal healthcare.
Despite the fact that we're $9 billion a year on debt service right now.
Ultimately, if more people go to the doctor and therefore don't end up in hospital, it will actually save the health system money.
Except we've just agreed that for those of us who are fortunate to be on higher incomes, the cost isn't a barrier.
If you look at the government's debt forecasts, what is one of the biggest things driving increase in government debt well into the future? It's increasing costs of healthcare. By tackling these issues, by getting people going to the doctor so that they can stay healthier rather than ending up in hospital, we can help to tackle that long-term challenge.
So is cost a barrier for New Zealanders who earn more than 150 grand a year?
Regardless of whether it's a cost or not. I want New Zealanders going to the doctor.
We all want New Zealanders, but your argument here is premised on the fact you say that we'll reduce...
It's the going to the doctor thing. Yeah, I agree with you, but I know that this is going to be a conversation for the next 12 months. And the answer that Chippy should stick with is we have a philosophy that all New Zealanders should get free healthcare. We don't carve out the wealthiest from the poorest. And if he wants to go one step further, the idea of it's more expensive to carve those 300,000 out, so it would actually be a waste of our money to do that rather than just giving it to them. And to be honest with you, they're probably still going to pay because they're probably not just going to your local GP. They're probably, the richest people are probably going to specialists and stuff that won't be part of the free GPs.
The Mowbrays and the Wrights aren't waiting in an A&E with the plebs. Yeah. They're going to their gold-plated private hospital. They'll pay for it. Yeah,
but that means they won't be taking those 3 GPs anyway. That's what I'm saying. So it's like it's a non-issue. Yeah, it's a non-issue. You're right. I'm going to play the last 30 seconds of it, if for no other reason to annoy you.
Care costs in the future, but the way to do that would be by getting sick people who aren't going to the doctor to go to the doctor. You've just said that people who earn more than $150,000 a year don't face cost as a barrier to going to the doctor.
So they don't face cost as a barrier when they go to an emergency department either, because they don't get charged for that. I'd rather they went to the doctor than to the emergency department. Having a universal entitlement to free healthcare, regardless of where you're accessing that healthcare, is a principled decision that I think is the right one for New Zealand.
Despite what?
Yes,
I think that's the end of our clip.
Great answer. Exactly the same answer that was around free prescriptions. Remember, they had the same argument there of like, what about people that don't need the free prescriptions? That's fine. They get them anyway.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Listen, we're going to keep rolling because this is 90 seconds on pay equity, and then we're going to wrap up for the night.
So the economic and fiscal environment looms large over the election next year. The pay equity changes have essentially saved the taxpayer $12.8 billion, although obviously at the expense of those equity claims that were outstanding at the time of that decision.
Saved money off the backs of women who have been trying to get this over the line for the last 10 years, saved $12.8 billion. I think you mean stole it off the plate that was in front of them and just about to be paid out?
You were scathing. Absolutely scathing in your criticism of the government's decision. So, are you committed to reinstating pay equity?
We will reinstate pay equity. We will make sure that those people who are going through the process of ensuring that they get paid equal for, they get equal value, equal pay for equal work, we will make sure that that process is reinstated. The overall fiscal impact of that is something that we're working through now, and we'll set that out in our fiscal plan.
So will the pay equity that you are reinstating be different to the scheme that was previously in place, the one the government scrapped?
We're working through the pay equity scheme, the changes that we will make. It won't be a direct reversal, and one of the reasons it won't be a direct reversal is we don't want to cancel all of the existing pay equity claims for a third time. So we want to make sure that those people who are going through the system can complete the pay equity process and can get the pay that they've been fighting, in many cases, for decades for. They can actually get it.
$12.8 billion that was forecast to cost under the previous system. Will your scheme, and I appreciate you finalising the details, is it your expectation that your scheme will be more or less expensive?
Well, the government haven't released the detail of how they came up to the $12.8 billion figure. So what we are doing through our costing is we're going through and identifying how much we think our pay equity will cost to settle, and then we will make provision for that in our fiscal plan.
And from what you think at this stage, appreciating that it hasn't been finalised, is it more or less expensive than those forecasts that the government put out?
We'll make announcements on pay equity, including the costings, once we've finished that work.
Yeah, there you go. All right. I'm also interested at some stage, not tonight, I don't think, Chewie, but I do want to have a conversation around this. Do you commit to? Do you commit to? I hate that question, but I also hate how politicians answer it. Because, do you commit to? The answer to any of those, do you commit to not working with XYZ? Do you commit to not costing XYZ? Do you commit to rebuilding the Dunedin Hospital? Yes. The only answer that is of any truth is you can say, as it stands right now, all other things considered, that is our intention. If, like a worldwide pandemic turned up and it caused our books to be thrown out through no control of ours, maybe we would reassess it. So if you're going to hold me to my feet to the fire of do I commit to, if there's a massive influx of something that I have no control over, then I'm not going to answer your question. If on the understanding that my answer is based on the current projections in monetary, or projections, then that's our plan. Now I don't know whether that would be a good answer or not, because it could be spun. Oh, he wouldn't commit to it. But that's actually the only honest answer anyone can give to any of those kinds of questions, because you can only commit to things when you know what's going to happen 100%. Things, if anything comes out of the woodwork to knock you off your commitment or your promise, sometimes these things happen. Do you commit to sticking at your job for the next 12 months? Yeah, of course. Oh, something happened and I got called away to Auckland because I had a dying relative that needed me to look after him for 6 months. It wasn't part of my plan, but it wasn't part of the known future either. So I do get frustrated by that in general, and I think we'll address more of that as we go through the next 12 months. Mm-hmm. Do you commit to being an arsehole for the next 12 months? I think we could ask that one. Easy yes there. Let's do some danger of mouse messages and then let's get out of here. Got my pins, are on my tinfoil hat, see Discord. Do you want to open up Discord and have a look? We can show the photo maybe afterwards. Over Red Rover says inheritance tax is charged on those without cash. Citizen Gold, Jack's argument should have been to have a cut-off point and increase the visits for the poor. Proletariat says, stand beside Chewie on the Mowbrays. Good one. Chewie was joking. You do know Chewie was joking, just in case you're unclear. Chewie was joking. Kookie says, my father, who is a GP, has raised an important point on these free visits capacity. There is a potential that the free visits will put a lot of load on clinics, and it's not being talked about. It is being talked about. We spoke to Barb Edmonds about that exact point, and I've heard it also asked in conversations. And I found out today, I think, when I was listening again, capital gains tax is going to come in the middle of 2027. The GP visits don't start till the middle of 2028. So we have got 2.5 years to increase GP stocks, because you're right, obviously, if things are free all of a sudden, and the good news is that the vulnerable and the poor can now go to the doctors, we need to have the doctors for them to go to. We're all hearing stories at the moment about week-long waits and that sort of stuff. So yeah, you're 100% right. I do think they are talking about it. That doesn't mean they are going to solve the problem, but it is something that has come up. Chewie.
Yeah, like the GP thing I have seen discussed. And look, the thing that annoys me about this, and annoys me about a lot of things, no matter what the colour of the political team you support, we knew the GP issue was coming 30 years ago. We looked at the average age of our GPs and how many we had of them, and we all went, we need to solve this problem. And what everybody did from that point on was fucking nothing. And so now we're burning out what GPs we have. They don't have enough funding to do the job that they need. And people training in that field are looking around and going, oh, cool, I'm going to have to fight for everything here in New Zealand, so I'm going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
We need to solve that problem too.
Cool. Anything else we got for tonight? Because I'm ready to wrap, if you're ready to wrap.
No, because it's not nice time. I'm getting nudged in the leg by a very small, insistent dog that it is Mookie's time.
My one's just gone to sleep in the corner there. All right, whānau. I got a few things on the agenda for us for this week. I've put a few feelers out there for interviews. They haven't come back to me today, so I'll keep my powder dry until we find out. But yeah, looking forward to spending the rest of the week with you. But I think as it goes, we're probably done. We're done for today. I think today we're done for. If you're a new patron, hopefully, if I've done this right, pardon me, you will see yourself in the credits. And anyone else who wants to be involved with that, then of course you can just check out patreon.com/A Big Hairy News.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we
people pointing out fireworks and stuff over the next few nights and people to look after their pets, Chewie. It's a good little reminder, eh?
Yep, absolutely. Thanks to my absolute tool of a neighbour for setting them off unexpectedly last night. But yes, weeks of this. Weeks.
All right, team. We'll catch you tomorrow night from 9 for a next edition of Big Hero News. Hooroo, everybody.
Cheers, fam.